Welcome to Heartistry. Today, we welcome a phenomenal community organizer. Let me tell you a little bit about this guest. Today's guest is Shailaja Dixit. Shailaja is the Executive Director of Narika. We will be hearing so much more about Narika and their many decades of critical work in the San Francisco Bay Area and far more reaching even than that. Shailaja holds 13 plus years of experience in the field of domestic violence advocacy, management, and leadership, and brings a diverse range of expertise to her work, which is heavily influenced by her passion for community building. Please join me in welcoming Shailaja Dixit to Heartistry. And please join me in welcoming Shailaja Dixit to Heartistry.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited for our talk today.
Likewise, you and I have intersected in many ways socially through various professional overlaps and events, and you're just such a wonderful patron of the arts, and I think arts used as activism, especially.
Yeah.
And so I am just really excited to be in community with you, generally speaking, and give our listeners a chance to hear about you, your journey, and all the amazing work that you're doing and get to be a part of. So thank you for being here
Thank
today.
you. Oh gosh, all the gratitude is mine. I followed your work, the amazing work Nurani does, the podcast you have, and I'm very honored to be here, really.
Ah, well, let's jump in. You know, what I really love to do is, before we get to the present, so to speak, is really hear a little bit about your personal history. I think that informs who we are in present day, and not to say that we haven't evolved from how and where we began. But tell us a little bit about your origin story, where you were born, brought up, anything about your personal and family history.
Sure. And that's very interesting you asked that because that's
Mm,
something that I think about all the time because I feel like what roots we draw ourselves to keep changing as
yeah,
we realize kind of what some of the things that we grew up with meant or what how they're viewed now. So at the
exactly.
current time, how I identify currently, I was born in Kathmandu, Nepal.
Okay.
And for that reason, I do have a very soft spot. I don't know what stories we tell ourselves. It's not like I have any active memory of Nepal, but I kind of love Kathmandu, Nepal, identify with that. My grandmother from my dad's side and my mom's side are all like from Andhra Pradesh and Kerala.
Okay.
So I really I look up a lot to my paternal grandmother, and I think a lot of her feminist roots I like to think are in me. So I
Mm,
always like to bring that out that I feel like somewhere the elephants of Kerala, which have a matriarchal lineage, and my grandmother, they're all kind of tied up in this mystical story in my head.
yeah.
I grew up in Delhi, and that comes with its own set of trauma. I think that's would be the earliest that I would draw some of what I do today
Mm.
to. Growing up in Delhi, not an easy city to grow up in or a safe city. Came here for my master's in 1998. I I actually was doing a lot of theater back home, and it's a funny
Okay.
story because, my mom was like, "You have a lot of potential, and apply to colleges." And just because, I really wanted to honor my mother, and I was kind of like, "Yeah, what's the harm?" I tried to just one college. I applied to just one college of journalism and marketing to say,
Okay.
"Fine, I'll just do that." And they reached out and they were like, "Yeah, we like what you wrote and come on in." And I was like, "Okay, I guess this is happening. Let's have an
Uh,
adventure." And I was like,
yeah.
"I'm going to go back. I'm not going to stay after my master's." I was so determined that I met my husband in college. And I was
How
like,
funny.
"Shri, are you going to go back?" And he's like, "Maybe we'll work a little while." So I was like, "Okay, I'm going to apply for one job and see if, like almost kind of like, am I supposed to do this or not?" And
Yeah.
I got that one job.
There you go. My goodness. And where did you, when you first moved, where did you do college? What
Oh,
city?
I moved to Florida.
Okay.
Yes, that time I had no political context or anything of it
Sure.
because everything
Yeah.
was new. I loved everything in terms of the newness of it.
Got
Um,
it.
and it was a big adjustment because I'd never lived anywhere other than Delhi.
Yeah.
I did land with my aunts and uncles, so it was a little bit of a cushioned landing.
Okay. Yeah.
I think college life here, like graduate studies here, I came for my master's, it just blew my mind. Like
Mm.
academically, I fell in love with this country. Like if I could go back now and do my master's again, I would. That's kind of what I'm still thinking of. Like, should I
Ah,
study again?
yeah.
It was just exhilarating. Professors who loved what you were saying. You could
Yeah.
have a conversation and challenge them.
That's so true.
People who really loved what they were doing. So that was, I think, the first time I was kind of like, wait, there must be something nice in this
Yeah.
country.
There you go. Oh, that is interesting. So you meet your husband in Florida then. That's where the two of you met. You end up staying in the States. When did you come to the Bay Area?
Oh, I came in 2006.
Okay.
So we spent a good 5, 6 years in Arizona.
Okay.
Um, my husband and I were there, both were working, and then my second one was born. And that's the funny part. I was going to go back to India again with my firstborn,
Yeah.
and then I found out I'm expecting, and I was like, I don't want to make this whole move, so I'll move after he's born. I think that's the last time I talked about moving after that. It was just too much life, just too much life. But yeah, we moved to the Bay Area then, and it was to be with family. So that I'm really glad because we found, all my family lives here. So
Ah,
my husband's side, my sister, everybody's here, and I just wanted my children to have that,
yeah.
to know the love of, their cousins, their friends, friends who are like family.
Yeah.
And we found that here. So yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I live like
Beautiful.
in the heart of Desi land in the Bay Area, like San Ramon, Windermere. You can't get more Desi than that.
Sure, sure. Well, and I think just kind of connecting what you've shared with us even thus far is like you said, there's this feeling that that experience that you had, the years prior, and almost again, as I referenced it, a foreshadowing kind of to the larger
Yes.
kind of climate that we're experiencing, but even to your experience of feeling like you would never belong. And yet, I think the difference is finding community that perhaps felt the same way. So even if people continue to be othered, and we know that that's not okay, at least we're building community of like experiences, so to
Yes,
speak.
yes,
You
yes.
know?
I totally agree with that. I think it's been a learning for me.
Yeah.
Because for 20 years I was so solidly in the same area in Delhi. Travel,
Yeah.
immigration, all those things were not natural to me. Um, but I've learned that you can build homes in multiple places. Your heart can belong to multiple. You can live with a lot of contradictions of loving a place and still not liking many things in it. Um, and yeah, I mean, I've taken the citizenship. I'm here and I'm very much committed to building this country for not just my children, but for all children, for, all the children around us. And there's such a spectrum of community around us, right?
Mm.
There's so many that we don't even connect with on a daily basis. So I feel like the one thing I can give back is with gratitude to the person, to the place that, has given my children a life, a good life, us a good life, a lot of
Yeah.
opportunities. So it's a very mixed.
Yeah.
Um, but whatever we do, I carry that from, I think my grandmother, my family were freedom fighters. They really
Mm.
believe that whatever land you live in, you give back.
Mm.
Uh, so I'm still figuring out what is a good way to give
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Absolutely. Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh, and today we are speaking with Shailaja Dixit and hearing about your childhood, your where you moved from in South Asia, eventually finding yourself in the States. And you referenced kind of feeling that connection to especially this strong feminism, these
Yes.
forces. And I was just uh, talking with some folks the other day, and I think we talk so much about how trauma lives in DNA. And I 100% believe that. And we witness the atrocities around the world and we think about, these young children who are going to carry these conscious and unconscious experiences with them. And not to dismiss that fact. However, I also believe that we carry that DNA of all the positive components
Mhm, mhm.
of the people that came before us, of our ancestors, the people we never met, the people that we shared homes with, and so on. And so I completely get that. And it's if anything, often unfortunate when we sort of just discover that later on in life, and then we wish, there's so much more I want to talk to you about. I have so many questions. Right. So,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, so what did you study in college? Because I want to start moving us towards the work that you've been doing for over a decade now. But yeah, I'm curious to know, what did you get your formal education in, and where did you think it was going to take you? And then I'm thinking by
I'm
your
sorry, I'm
visual
laughing.
response, exactly. I'm thinking there may have been a pivot somewhere.
Yes, I'm laughing because anything I formally studied is not what I finally settled in. But that's because I was a bit of a rebel in college too. I did my fair share of giving my mother gray hairs. So so I did my bachelor's in Japanese.
Oh, wow.
Something that I just I never I never took off with it, but I finished my honors, like my bachelor's in that undergraduate. My graduate degree was in advertising, but there was one course on market research which I just loved.
Hmm.
And I was good with, very weirdly, I was good with statistics, although I wasn't good with math. And I loved people. So I took off on a career for about 14 years in this country as a market researcher, talking to people, doing interviews, doing custom surveys, just listening a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and I liked it. I was good at it. I became vice president of operations. Weirdly, I was the one dealing with data. Now when I think about all that, I'm kind of like, how did I do that? But I really loved it. But I remember there was a moment when I was talking to some parents about some rare condition that their teens had. Um, and I was talking because I was going to help design the promotion, after talking to parents. They were so traumatized. They didn't see the difference between what I was doing and actually like a
Mm.
medical research. So they were pouring
Oh,
out all their heart to me.
okay.
And it struck me that I'm about to take all their vulnerabilities, turn it
Mm.
into a marketing message,
Mm.
and give it over to the pharma company.
Wow. Yeah.
And I didn't like that one research, I just felt like this is not what I was born to do.
Mm.
And it came at a time when, my kids were growing up, and I was thinking of, do I still keep working full time, which I know every feminist is going to be like, why did you? But that's the reality
Yeah.
of it at that time for me. And it also happened at a time when the 2012 rape happened in Delhi. That was a big
Mm.
one when Nirbhaya happened in Delhi.
Mhm.
It all kind of coincided. I feel like life moves in these ways that you don't understand
Yeah.
until you look back at it from another 5 years down the line.
Right.
But
Right.
all of these things were happening, and I just said, I have to do something else with my life. I don't feel this is meaningful. And the night I left, I resigned from my job, and I
Oh,
never thought that I would ever be somebody who's not working full time. My mother is like a fierce career feminist woman. She was really worried, like, what's going to happen to my daughter? I was going against every principle of feminist, like, we are equal to men, we can do everything,
yeah.
theme that all of us hold. And I was like, my child needs me, my children need me. I'm not being able to handle it. And in that moment, I walked into a volunteer training for Narika. And I just happened to go there. I had no idea why I was going there.
Wow.
I felt a pull because I had worked a lot in like street theater activism when I was in high school and in college. All of that had gone away for 12, 14 years while I was working here.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
when I walked in, I just texted home and I said, I think I'm home. I just
Oh,
started listening to them, and I was like, I identify with everything these people are talking about that is happening in our community. And I just felt this fire started kindling
mm,
in my heart that I hadn't felt for a long time. And I think I was, even though I was at a time when I thought I was like at my lowest point, having like struggling with my job and managing all these pushes
yeah,
and pulls in my life, I found I found meaning. And that moment I will never forget. Like I'm just so thankful that I had that moment.
yeah. I, yeah, I get it. These moments do just come up in your life where whatever got you there,
Yeah.
it's a probably a combination of multiple things like you're describing, but there is something inside you that just ignites. And
Yes, and you know
yeah,
it. You're like,
yeah.
this is, and I remember somebody told me, oh, you're volunteering right now. Normally in 2, 3 years, everybody gets bored of it. You're going to go do something else. And at the 3 year mark, I was very worried. I'm like, am I going to be like bored of
Uh,
this? Or
right,
no, but I felt like this is, when you
right.
find meaning, everything else you kind of,
Yeah.
I feel like I don't have to explain that to you. You,
Yeah,
you have
no,
meaning in
it's
your art.
true. Well, and one thing I want to say too, you know, when we think feminism, just because you were referencing that and oh, going against all of the,
Yes.
I have come to really hold a place of, to me, what feminism is the right to choose,
Yes,
you
exactly.
know, and it is because we know like raising children, running these
Yep.
households, doing all the things that we do, working full time, some of us simultaneously, entrepreneurs, what have you. But each of those are so
So exactly,
demanding,
exactly.
taxing. And if one or the other or a combination of it is calling any individual, the right to choose
Choose.
your path is really
Exactly.
where the power
Exactly.
lies.
And that was a beautiful, I think that was, I'm very grateful for that learning, not only for myself,
Yeah.
um, but also for my work. Because now when I talk to survivors or women who are making very difficult choices that are not
Yeah.
understood by the world around them, or endorsed or praised, they look up to,
Yeah.
I'm able to honestly tell them it's okay. Like
Right.
make your choice, and one step at a time, you'll figure it out, but you got to listen to your heart voice. And it's
100%.
not coming from a place of, look, I've been so perfect and successful. It's really coming from a place of, I've struggled
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
whatever way, with all the
Totally.
privilege that surrounded that
Yeah.
struggle. So I sometimes I get it, what you're trying, what trade-off someone's making. Um,
Yeah.
and it happens all the time. People are like, oh my God, you're the executive director. I'm like, first of all, executive director of the nonprofit just means you're doing a lot of work.
Oh, yes. Sounds very prestigious, and it is,
Exactly.
but it comes with a
It comes with
lot of
its own set.
responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah.
like the last person standing. You
Yeah.
can't
You're the front line, the
front
back
line,
end,
you're the last
the
back. Exactly. And then I really started as a volunteer. I did not
yeah.
start this thinking that I never dreamed I was going to be the
Mm.
executive director for Narika. Like
Yeah.
when Narika accepted me, 4.5 years back in this role, I was just like, how? I was just so full of wonder and gratitude. Like,
Mm.
how? I remember walking into that training like in 2012 or 2013 or something, and going like, wow, look at these people. Like they're amazing
Yeah.
stalwarts, and look at what
Yeah.
they're doing. And now I see volunteers looking at me like that, and I'm like,
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, I don't want to make any assumptions about the folks that are listening to this conversation. Can you talk a little bit about Narika? What
yes,
is Narika? Anything about the history of this very profound organization? I remember when I was in college in the Bay Area and hearing about it, Narika, Maitri, like these, especially these two organizations for, gosh, yes, since the 90s. I remember knowing of them, knowing people who were volunteering, eventually being able to get involved in various ways myself. And anyway, but please.
Yes, thank you. How much time do we have? How if I start
Go,
talking about
go
America?
for it. Yes,
Yes.
yes. When it comes to important topics like this, time is
We just keep going.
irrelevant.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to start by saying I really have seen and felt your support for the movement for survivors. So I'm really thankful for that. And that was one of the reasons why I was excited to talk about it because I know you're really honoring the people in the movement. And you see us all. It's
Mm,
really lovely to be seen. Advocates are not always seen.
mm,
So I'm really appreciating your questions because rarely does anybody pause to ask those questions. And yet that's the healing. That's being
yeah,
seen. That's being able to tell your story in the way you want it.
yeah.
So about
Oh, thank
Narika,
you.
Narika is a domestic, simply put, we provide services to survivors of domestic violence in the Bay Area. The specialization is serving the South Asian community. Primarily, folks who are coming to us are women, and I'm not going to say that men or the LGBT community don't experience domestic violence. They do. Um, who come to us by dint of who we are and the folks who work here and some of are women, and I think women are systemically impacted quite a bit. And we are happy and grateful that we are able to be here to provide services. Narika was born almost 34 years ago in 1992. So we've been here time, a long time. It was started by founders, all women, immigrant women, who saw the need to have services that understood the culture a survivor is coming from. Not to say you stereotype someone, but to be able to meet them, maybe sometimes read between the lines, maybe have a conversation in a language they can speak in, maybe
Mhm.
provide food that, fills the soul, and really meets you where you are when you're in trauma to give you comfort, um, and help navigate the mainstream pathways. That's really, really important. Like as people who are new to the country, and I've experienced it. I would
Right.
assume you've experienced it. Um, we don't always understand what our rights are. We don't understand the new systems. We see a uniform person, we get scared. We don't,
Hmm.
you know, speak up. Even when we speak up, the harm may still be on us.
Yep.
So there's so many things to navigate. To have somebody who's a safe space, a safe person who can walk through all of this with you, trying to help the best we can. I think that's what Narika does. And people in our community are always surprised, no matter who I talk to, people will be like, domestic violence in our community? And
Mm,
I'm like, yes. Maitri is a sister organization. They work equally hard. They've been in the community as long. None of us have gone a day without work. There's never
yeah.
been a day when we are like, oh, today there was no problem. The helpline never rang. No
Right.
client ever needed help. We've been here 30 plus years and we are busy every single day. We're serving 1,000 clients an year. Yes, this problem very much exists in our community. We don't like to talk about it, but it's there in the systems, in our habits, in our stereotyping, in the
Mhm.
norms we have with each other, and therefore Narika
Absolutely.
exists. I think it would be lovely if we would put ourselves out
Right.
of business, but we
I was
can't.
thinking the same thing as I was, just prepping for the time you and I were going to have together for this. Wouldn't it be lovely? Wouldn't it be lovely if the need was no
The need
longer?
was no longer exactly the day I can report, you know, we didn't have anybody call us because there was not because they couldn't, not because they're
Yeah,
trapped,
exactly.
but they genuinely did not experience violence. And that they just still feel so far away. I
Mm.
mean, if you see what's happening at the political levels, the social levels, there's just
How the
rhetoric.
one fuels the other
Exactly.
economically as people
Yes.
feel economic pressure and strain.
Pressures. Yes.
We know how that, comes into households.
Or what we perpetuate in terms of culture and tradition.
Yep.
We keep forgetting that both culture and tradition are fluid.
Yeah.
The beauty there is
100%.
that they can grow, they can,
Evolve.
evolve. We can affirm the things that serve us and question the things that don't. And then the
Yeah.
permissions given to us from the highest quarters to be misogynistic, to perpetuate violence against women. All
Yeah.
that counts.
I was thinking even, you using the example of people who say, what, in our community. And I also believe that there's probably a mentality, whether it's somebody who is, having violence inflicted on them and, or, different scenarios where there's also a great sense of pride almost in, say, and I'll talk about this more from the perspective of my faith when we talk about Islam and obviously Islamophobia, and even just this week what happened at this Islamic center in San Diego. And
Yes,
so we know that the hate is real.
it's
And
real.
so if there is something that happens in my community that would actually further perpetuate these stereotypes of the Muslim terrorists and, these sorts of things, I'm certainly not going to say anything like that, because why would I want to in any way
Add to it.
perpetuate
Yes.
that, right? So now appropriate that to domestic violence. If we are seeing violence in any particular communities and we're of that community, we're going to almost want to suppress it because no, 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 people already think this way of us. So, we need to make ourselves seem like we're pristine, so it can kind of go both ways depending on what your vantage point is, your experience is. We know that there's like communities within communities, and some are painted in other ways. So I'm sure all of these are factors for why people are even coming forward and seeking out support.
Yeah, I think that there's several things that you mentioned. If I were to untie this knot,
Mm,
definitely the model minority
yeah,
um, is a very big factor. A lot of the communities, the South Asian community is seen as affluent. Households are seen as well-to-do households, luxurious households. Survivors there find it very hard to reach out for help
yeah,
because you are going to be the one person disrupting the whole peace in that neighborhood. You don't want to be the house where cops are coming up. You don't want to be the place that people talk about, oh my goodness, like this person moved out, or there's a restraining order filed, or the family broke
yeah,
up. For that reason, there's a lot that is taken and tolerated in silence. You
exactly.
don't want to be the disruptor, right?
Yeah,
Um, the thing that is important for everybody to understand is it's happening in so many households. It's actually you're not the only person. So that's the most powerful
yeah,
message to give someone is, and that's the message I would like to give to our community to, like kind of what you were saying. Every community has domestic violence. There
yeah,
is nothing peculiar, strange, or worse about our community. Every community, every
exactly.
socioeconomic strata, every culture has violence against women. I mean, it's not a thing to be proud of.
Yep.
But if we're worrying about are we the only bad ones, that's not the case. But we have to clean up our community. But like we are not going to like it if somebody else walks into our household and tries to clean us up. We're going to be like, who are you to do that?
Yeah,
But then we
yeah.
have to take steps that work within our culture, our community to, you know, make the reforms. And I feel it's happening. I don't want to be all
Mhm.
doomsday. I
Right.
feel like when, it's not like that. When I first started as a volunteer, this was a lot more like there was a lot less talk about it. There was a lot less awareness, resources. I feel like now there are times when I can go out and talk about this, and people are
Mm,
appreciative. Women are supporting from the places of power that they can. They're trying
yeah,
to lift voices. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I wouldn't say the dial hasn't moved.
yeah,
There are more and more avenues where we can go and say, where advocates are willing to go and say, we feel safe in the community standing up and saying we are domestic violence advocates. Earlier, we used to have so much, like at least I used to worry
mm,
a lot, will
wow,
people, what is going to happen? Are we safe in the community? Now I
wow.
feel the support. Whether it's I've become more fearless, I don't know.
Sure.
I
It's
couldn't
likely
care
a
less.
combination.
It
I'd
could
like
be
to
a
think it's a
combination.
combination.
Yes, but
Yeah.
I do think I want our community, we can't become who we don't imagine. And I want our
Mm,
community to know that we are doing a good job. There are women who speak up. There are men who speak up. There are parents who speak up for their children. If we could just come together and find each other, we can build such a beautiful future. We can magnify our impact and our influence. a lot of us exist in the community doing it in our way, you know.
Yeah.
So we become intersectional and we hold hands. And the same thing for mental health. Everyone's like, South Asians don't want. I'm like, that's
Mm,
not true.
yeah.
Everybody wants to be happy. Every flower wants to bloom. Question is, are we giving it what it needs? You talk to a South Asian community, you don't understand that we don't have formal pathways to going to a therapist that are like embedded in our traditions.
Hmm.
There's a lot of education and different type of awareness and conversation that needs to happen.
Right.
Maybe we'll see a larger uptake. Maybe we'll see some fear fall away. So I don't want our community to dislike ourselves. You
Yeah.
can't hate yourself into change. You can
Ah,
only love yourself into evolving, right? That's
beautiful.
what I tell myself too.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Welcome back to Heartistry. We are speaking with the Executive Director of Narika, Shailaja Dixit, today, and hearing about, the tremendous work of Narika over many years. And I'm curious to know, when we talk about, just like you said, just bringing different individuals generationally, otherwise from the community together. I also so much of that I imagine is also rooted in those conversations are not just raising awareness to what's going on, but the as part and parcel of that, it's about prevention,
Yes.
right? And can you talk about Narika's approach to prevention, how and where that shows up for you?
Yes. I think it's in everything we do,
Yeah.
honestly. It's the conversations we have with our volunteers. It's a conversation we're having even with survivors, because their future generation is coming and they have
Yeah.
experienced or witnessed violence already. So
Right.
how are we going to repair that? Um,
Hmm.
it's so working on all of this, we did come up with our parenting program, that's Safal, that
Mm.
South Asian Parents Heal and Learn. Because what we saw was that we saw there are a lot of programs that talk to the youth about what is a healthy relationship. Like schools might be
Yeah.
stepping in, programs might be stepping in. Prevention is youth oriented, which makes sense because that's
Sure.
where life is still starting, relationships are forming. But we felt that the parents were not youth come back to a house, an intergenerational household where parents are not understanding the language they're
Mm.
speaking or the things that the youth are built towards, and then
Right.
they're deported. So
Mm.
we worked with Lotus Family Therapy, Sangeeta Biswas. We developed a program. It's called Safal, and we give these parenting workshops around the Bay Area. Those are very hyper local conversations, but I
Mm.
think they will have generational impact. So that's one of the
Absolutely.
concrete things that we do, because we feel we kick off this intergenerational conversation around boundaries, emotional regulation, understanding the development of the brain, understanding impact of trauma in the childhood.
Hmm.
What does repair look like? Culturally, what does praise look like? What does apology
Hmm.
look like? We actually have a workshop on May 31st
Mm.
in Union City. And we found the conversations they had a ripple effect. People
Mm.
who were coming to our workshops were talking to their neighbors, they were talking to their children, they were talking to the other teachers in there. And I think the high point for us was there was a dad, a Muslim dad,
Mm.
who after like the fourth session, I think it was on emotional regulation, came and told Sangeeta, um, I've no one's ever talked to me about emotions. And
Ah,
the most heartening thing is seeing how
yeah.
many dads come in.
Mm.
Dads are wanting to do something
Yes. Yeah.
wonderful for their children. And I feel like maybe we can change the narrative around, men. I'm kind of tired of hearing. I don't disagree with it. I see it every day that there's a lot of violence on women. But then there are some men, a few men, a lot of men, I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
who are leaning in, especially when they become parents.
Yeah.
And how do we have that conversation? And that's something that we are really thinking about right now.
Yeah.
Um, how do we have more conversations with folks who are not in the room?
Mm.
You
And
know,
it's very much the, multiple truths can exist,
yes.
right? And even what you're talking about is reminding me of conversations I've had with people either who have been historians for the 1947 Partition Archive where they're interviewing either people now, of course, with as time passes, many of them have passed on, but either survivors of partition and or children of survivors.
Yes.
But a common thread that has come up for these folks who've been in those conversations, and even that I've had with folks in um, that experienced it, is men actually never felt they had a space or place to talk about their trauma. And, so the way, again, we have a common approach of, how we're approaching the South Asian community as far as just that vantage point. I'm certain it's not exclusive to the South Asian community, but I think culturally that is something where men are not encouraged to be outwardly emotional as far as like showing sensitivity. I feel very fortunate. My father was extremely sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that like the way he would be moved by music and poetry, he had no qualms about like tears running down his face, that kind of thing. And often, like the conversations I feel like we had, my mom is dynamic and powerful and all the things as well, but only, you get used to what is your normal. So only now, as I sit back, I say, my God, he's the one that had the talk with us about, intimacy and things of that
Right.
kind of, and being in healthy relationships and that sort of thing. And I realized what a gift that was, even
Yes.
though it was my norm. It is not the general norm.
Yes, yes, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, what is normal? Can
Yeah.
we redefine
Yeah.
what is normal? And that there is not a normal, like there is
Yeah.
no benchmark that we're all trying to like live up to and
Totally.
be this perfect normal,
No.
right? And we are using this word trauma, and it's very, just a week ago, the advocates in our organization and I, we were having a conversation, and trauma is really the response of that our body has to an incident. It's a
Yeah.
biological response. At least, we were just listening to this talk because we talk about trauma all the time,
Yeah.
and we sometimes talk about trauma as if it's a given, its impact is a given. But it's also true that with care, with love, with what the presenter then was calling buffering, that is,
Mm.
giving care and love, and putting mindfulness practices, going back to nature, allowing time to heal yourself, you can undo some of the impact of that trauma. It doesn't have to rule your life or your generations. There
Mm.
are intentional, simple practices that feel like common
Mm.
sense, which actually can help. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it removes it, but for
Sure.
us to really, as you're saying, whether it's generational trauma or, political trauma or having, war or the partition,
Yeah.
there is so much we carry in our stories, in our heads, in our bodies.
Right.
If we pause to first acknowledge it, accept it, and then work, towards, what when she was saying like you can have a mindfulness, you can go to nature, you can walk, and I'm like, all those things when I'm triggered are not going to happen, because what I'm
Yeah.
going to do is going to hyper productivity. And that's what our
Mm. Or
community
some
does.
people close off,
Close off.
people have different responses.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
you don't want the support
Yeah.
that's going to help. And that's what the community does as a whole.
Yeah.
That's what systems do. That's what individuals do. So if
Right.
we can slow down and open up
Yep.
just when it feels most painful,
Mm.
and somebody
Yeah.
trusted comes along and puts a soothing hand, you know,
Yeah.
who knows what future could look like.
Absolutely. Well, all of this takes time. It takes people. It takes resources, therefore. I mean, you talked about, yes, you started your relationship with Narika as a volunteer for many years. And I know that there are many volunteers that support this work. And needless to say that that time, that energy, that compassion is priceless. Um, but as an organization, how do you sustain the resources that you offer to your
Yes.
clientele, and how are you continuing to serve those that, are existing clients? How are you getting out there to do these outreach events, like you mentioned, these, hyper local or large? I know you're a nonprofit. Anything that you can talk about around the infrastructure, just so we can better understand what the needs are.
Yes. And thank you very much for asking. I really appreciate that because that's the cooking in the kitchen no one wants to
Right.
look too deep into.
Yep.
But there are folks doing it, and their care is my job is to,
Yeah.
there's the family at Narika that's working. So we don't charge anything for our services. I really want especially if any survivors listening to this, or anybody who wants somebody to get help, we do not charge for anything. We offer helpline, therapy, support groups, emergency motel services, transportation, economic financial literacy workshops, transitional housing.
Mm.
None of this is ever charged because we understand survivors have financially already experienced great harm, and that
Yeah.
should never be a barrier. So
Mm.
we really exist on the kindness and the giving and the compassion of the community, first of all, individual donors that are around us, community foundations, the government when it is feeling compassionate towards this kind of work
And prioritizing
and prioritizing it
support
or
of,
funding it.
yes,
Exactly.
society. Yes.
Exactly. And by government, I mean both state, city, federal levels.
Yeah.
So we engage at all levels to get this. And part of the work that I feel like I want to do in our community is to have folks understand people are not just volunteering here because they're whiling away their time. There are paid staff who are dealing with a lot of trauma with very little resources, and they get probably one-fourth the salary of what the tech folks are getting. And they're putting in probably 100 times more in
Yeah.
terms of what they're dealing with, the situations they're facing, the kind of services they're providing, how they're extending themselves, and making, every dollar go the mile. So there are a lot of times I have a conversation about should staff, are your staff paid? And, you know, yeah, they're underpaid. They're paid,
Yeah.
but they're
Yeah.
not just us, historically, nonprofit, women's work, social work,
Right.
social justice work, people, they're underpaid, but that should not be so. The people
Yeah.
who got, I always say the people who got the shots the first when COVID started, because they wanted us back on working, should be the ones who should be paid. Teachers, medical workers, staff,
Yeah.
nurses, advocates, social workers
Right.
should be paid more. So that's kind of part of my work, is to say, how do we get, and one advantage there I feel could be that our community is affluent. Parts of our community is affluent.
Right.
There are many in the affluent community who understand the work. I'm grateful
Hmm.
for that. They support
Hmm.
us, but more can. It boggles my mind that with the kind of affluence that our community has, that any survivor from the South Asian community should be struggling for housing,
Right.
for, first of all, no survivor should be struggling. That's the bottom line. But realistically speaking, our community, if we really step forward, and I'm not saying just to Narika, to
Yeah.
Maitri, to
Yeah.
anybody, if you really step forward, or any of the other orgs, there's SAVE, there's so many orgs that are working. So
Right.
if we step forward to form a net, survivors, mothers, especially with children, would not be
Mm.
struggling to figure out, where am I going to go if I leave this
Yeah.
abusive relationship?
Right. Right.
And that
100%
should
agree.
never be the choice. The choice should never be, am I going to stay here, or am I going to have a house over my head and my children have education, food, and health? You know what? A mother can never
Absolutely.
make that choice.
And so, what is the how in recent years, present one included, how has funding been in this area, both
It's
individuals and or
yeah,
foundation, government?
foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say that it's a mixed bag in that we find that certain funding that is with the systems, the larger systems like the government, it's always uncertain. It's always coming or going. You're not quite sure if you're going to lean into it. We are losing some of it. Not as many opportunities come up. We have to advocate for the budgets. There are people who are listening, but there's a lot that's not flourishing
Yeah.
as it has. Um, and then I would say at the individual foundation levels, there are a lot of people. I'm very heartened by a lot of people who are stepping up to support
Mm.
us. It's not that we have had to close doors. but I think we're having to work harder to stay in the same place right now.
Right.
And we're hanging by a thread at many times to say, if these two large pieces of funding go away, are we going to survive this? And then I think
Right.
about the 1,000 women we are serving, the 30 families we have housed since January already. And I'm like, we can't afford to. We
Mm,
can't afford to. So how are we going to find the people who will hear these stories, who will understand why it's important to invest? This is our future.
yeah.
Uh,
And if you just think about it, even, sort of just this bird's eye view, just where Narika exists and therefore the communities that you serve geographically, San Francisco Bay Area, we know the cost of living is
it's
extremely
so
high.
high.
I mean, gas is California is the highest, or if not one of the
Yes,
highest, as far as
yes,
like just general cost of living, gas prices as we're seeing them skyrocket in X number of months. And so if you weigh that against things getting more expensive, how are your employees supposed to continue to live with the salary that is already very much, like you
much.
said, in this category of being
Yes,
underpaid? Your costs are going up to provide those facilities, whatever other tangible resources, everything has a cost and, a cause and
yes,
effect.
yes,
And
yes,
so this is where those who can, we are looking to you a little bit more seriously and gravely and saying we really do need your support at times like this. We recognize everybody gets pinched to a certain degree,
yes.
but that's also all very relative. And so I'm happy to know that there are many who of our affluent
Yeah,
community that
yes.
are supporting. But I think just
There can be
continuing
more. Yes.
exactly.
And not because we want to grow Narika or we have this fantastic
It's just to
corporate goal.
sustain.
It is to sustain, and it is
Yeah.
to sustain for services that are very much needed. 90%, 99% of survivors go through financial abuse. They may be coming from a 3,000 square foot house, but they may not have access to a single dollar. We know
Yeah.
survivors may earn in six-figure salaries, but they don't have access to their own income. So when a survivor steps away, it's without equity, without savings, without income, without knowledge of their financial rights. And then they have to look into housing in a situation like the Bay Area. And the solution can't be you go away. You can't leave every connection you have. Why would you lose all the community? Your children
Right.
are still going to school. You still
Exactly.
want education for them. It is a very hard knot. And I feel like we are very far from perfect. We are applying band-aids in many times, but that band-aid is also important for somebody to be able to build something larger.
Yeah.
The transitional homes we are offering, that's like all wraparound care for a whole year for somebody to create savings, be able to get into housing. Um, all of that is really important. So you know, I would say do your due diligence, check
Yeah.
if nonprofits are taking the money where they're saying
Mm-hmm.
they're doing, ask for the
Absolutely.
reports, but trust us. Trust us. We're literally, what is it that we will get out of it? We are
Yeah.
working 24/7.
Yeah.
What are
Well,
we going to get?
exactly. And I know that so, you're constantly applying for grants. You are, again, raising awareness and doing year-round fundraising, even through individuals. You do also have an annual event, your gala. Can
Yes,
you speak
yeah.
to that at all?
Yes, 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 yes. I'm excited to speak to that because it's like a big wedding that happens every year.
Sure. Yes.
We are so exhausted by the
Well,
end
and
of it, but it's so
I
fun.
want you to get into the specifics, but I also do want to qualify exactly that because I do think that sometimes we see these events and we think, why are they spending on that? That money should be going to the very thing they said they need the money for. Yes, and there is something about getting people together in shared time and space that really galvanize this call to action,
Yes,
that give you a real deep sense and window into what's being done, what the impact is, how the resources are making the difference, therefore. And so I hope that anybody who, yes, they can be also hugely joyful and celebratory and all of the things, but not to, and never to detract from really like why they're
yes,
so important.
yes. And as you said, I think the gala is our annual fundraiser.
Yeah.
But it's also our way of thanking the
Mm.
folks who have helped us all year long, showing the impact of the work we have done. Um, it's a very collective space for celebration, joy, grieving for
Yeah.
that we have experienced. There is a, as you said, there are people who come year after year many times who understand the trajectory the organization's taking, who hear the stories, who are walking with us, who are the people we are, and we want more folks like that who we're not we're I think the gala is a place to begin the journey with us. If you've
Mm.
not met us before, right? Begin the journey with us, have a conversation. We are local and small enough that if you ping me, I would have a coffee with you and say, this is the work we're doing,
Yeah.
and we get a lot of people who volunteer. There are people, a lot of people who donate. So it happens in September. This year it's September 13th. We typically have some celebrity who speaks to the cause.
Yeah.
Someone who really aligns with our cause. I just love it that the actors and the artists we have honored in the last couple of years have all been folks who really speak to it. So we had
Mm-hmm.
Shabana Azmi ji the
Mm.
year before. We had Divya Datta last year. Just, I speak to them and I feel like I'm talking to women who walked the talk,
Yeah.
and they're there genuinely to support us. And yes, we have good food, I think. Always important for Daisy gatherings. Um,
Yes.
and we have cultural performances because we really want to lift and honor local artists. So, a nonprofit in itself is not an entity that just sits in isolation.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like anytime gathering something for ourselves, we have to gather something for those who sit
Mm.
in community for us. So local artists, local performers, the people who are, in engaging with food, the different industries that come together. We are thoughtful in who we are engaging with and why,
Yeah.
and really honor their time. We're not just, saying, okay, you all volunteer and then we walk away with it. Um,
Beautiful.
so I think it's a beautiful place of connection. And then we are really grateful that we are able to raise funds. And those funds almost constitute right now 20 to 30% of our
Wow.
revenue stream.
Right.
So they're very, very critical. I'm not joking when I say that that is how we sustain a lot of things in Narika, which are unique in terms of the space we give to survivors when they come in, the welcome we give them, an area
Mm.
to rest, the salaries we give to our staff to keep them, the mental health care we are providing to our staff to give them support.
Yeah.
Uh, a lot of this we are able to do because we know this support comes in, you know. A lot of our client aid comes from the gala, like literally
Mm-hmm.
transportation that's going out, motel nights where survivors finally sleep for the first time because they're in a safe place. So thank you for asking about it. I,
Of
I feel like
course.
gala is our heart.
Yes, yes. And generally speaking, whether about the gala or about the organization in general, what's the best way for folks to learn more, get in touch?
So you can visit our website, Narika at, narika.org, or you can just email me. My first name, Shailaja at narika.org. I'd be happy to connect with anyone, whether it's for Narika or for the movement.
Mm.
I really feel like we are very grateful to those who support us. And if I can support anyone in whatever walk they're doing, it always comes back leaps and bounds. So
Mm.
yeah.
Ah, well, thank you is an understatement to say the least. Again, for the work you've been doing with Narika specifically in this space for so many years. I just, again, may we look to that day when it
Yes.
is not needed,
It, yes.
and yet the prevention will always be. And so on some level, it will continue. Right. And just, I think it
Yes.
just speaks to like creating communities of connection, of transparency, of honor,
Yes.
honoring,
Of
and
honoring, I think,
yeah,
and understanding repair is always possible.
yeah,
It's never too late. That's kind of comes from our prevention program too. It's
mm,
never too late to say sorry. It's never too late to go to therapy. It's never too late to call a helpline. It's never too late to just, lavish love on yourself or someone else in your life. Our brains and bodies are phenomenal in how neuroplasticity can change it. And I'm not a therapist or a doctor, but I feel it's possible, that's hope. That's the hope. The hope is that when we see harm, experience harm, witness harm, we stand up against it, we understand it, we acknowledge it, we talk about it, and then we repair it. You know, it's hard, it's not easy, but I feel that's our compassion, that's our
Yeah.
self-love, that's our hope. So
Yeah. Uh, well, thank you again for this commitment and compassion. As I say, this podcast is all about speaking with individuals who are bringing a passion, compassion, and commitment to whatever they're doing. And clearly, you emulate that. And I'm just so grateful for you, for your time today on Heartistry, and
oh
all
gosh.
that I know I haven't even witnessed yet in what you're doing.
No,
So,
thank you, Farah. This was so, this was so healing.
mm.
It's not often that, we are asked to, as I was saying, we are asked to sit down and just talk about ourselves.
Oh, it's well, and it's for me too. The fact that I just get to sit here for an hour and listen is and converse. It is.
Anytime you want to be on our helpline, let me know. You're a good listener.
Uh, well, I would be honored. I would be honored. We should certainly talk more about that.
Thank you
Yes,
for all you do.
yes.
Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Take care.